It's now time for Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. It began as a podcast, went live on the net, and transformed into a full-blown empire. It's the only daily boxing talk show on the planet, hosted by the only guy with the balls to do it. Many have stepped into the ring. Many have tried to take the belt. And one by one, they've fallen. Another victim of the undisputed heavyweight champion of Boxing Talk Radio. Talkin' Boxing with Billy C is on now.
My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart.
We're coming to you live from the Billy C Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C Show. Good morning, good day, good evening. Whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening, I hope you're doing okay for our last show, our last live show of 2017. Today's show is being brought to us in part by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant located on St. Simon's Island in Georgia. Check out the website, www.salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com, or give my man a call, 912-268-2328, 912-268-2328. Find out why I go all the way to St. Simon's to get an authentic Italian meal. And speaking of going to St. Simon's, make sure you join us for our next Billy C boxing event, which is taking place January 19th. We're calling it our After the Holidays holiday party, where you can join Sal and myself and some special guests at the Sea Palms Resort. And we're going to show you not one, not two, not three, but 4 classic fights. And you will be part of our live audience that we'll be recording for the next 4 episodes of Billy C's Boxing Revisited show. So make your plans right now. Visit cpalms.com. Call them up. Tell them you want to come to the Billy C event January 19th. Or just drop me an email, billy@talkinboxing. That's TALKINBOXING.com. And finally, today's show is being brought to us in part by my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage, The Baddest Man on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold. And you can get a copy of this right now while you're watching or listening to the show. Just visit barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com. And if you're looking to get a signed copy, just visit the webpage, or our website, I should say, billycboxing.com, or just drop me an email, billy@talkinboxing. That's TALKINBOXING.com. Just programming note, we will be back live Tuesday, January 2nd. You will notice some big-time changes, but we are off for the holidays after today's show, so we're sorry about that. And one last thing, I will be playing the other Christmas card, 'Twas the Night, Billy C's 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, after the show today. So at our closing, make sure you listen to that. That's my personal favorite. It was actually the first one we did back in 2008. So everybody that's been asking for those, and if you want a copy of them, just drop me an email and I'll get you a copy of them. But anyway, some stuff we're going to be talking about. We got Alex Pierpaoli coming up a little bit later, doing the final blast of the past of 2017. It's a request. Former world heavyweight title challenger Sir Henry Cooper will be who Alex and myself will be discussing. So make sure you tune in for that. Also, Dax Khan is going to be joining us to give us his thoughts on his favorite fights of 2017. We're going to squeeze him in at some point. Today, to close out the year, I got a bunch of emails to read, number one. But number two, yesterday we were talking about Anthony Joshua fighting Deontay Wilder. Is it going to happen in 2018, or is it going to be put off another year if it ever happens? And then we were sprinkling in discussion about Triple G and Canelo, the rematch. Will that happen? Will Canelo man up and fight Triple G. He's been dragging his feet, etc., etc. Will that fight happen? Will Billy Joe Saunders slip in the mix? I was also mentioning that I would love a dream fights between the rematch between Triple G and Canelo, and then Daniel Jacobs fighting Billy Joe Saunders, then the two winners fighting each other, and then the two losers fighting each other to fight the two winners, the winner of the two winners. And guess what? It all might happen. Yeah, I'm not kidding, because it was announced yesterday that Canelo. Now, this is something that we talk about all the time. At the end of the day, with all the greed factor and all of the stuff that goes in, trying to cherry pick, trying to pick the right fights, trying to make the most money, etc., 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 it boils down to one person. One person can make a fight happen or not. And you know who that is? The fighter. We've been talking about that for months. The fighter has the choice. If the fighter wants to fight, he says to his promoter, he says to his manager, he says to whoever the powers that make his decision, and say, listen, make the fight. I don't care. I don't want to play games. I want the fight. And that's exactly what Canelo has done. It was reported yesterday that they are extremely close to finalizing the rematch that will be taking place on Cinco de Mayo, the rematch that we all want to see, because most of us believe that Triple G won the fight. I think Canelo's got a good chance in the rematch. Joining me right now to give his thoughts, and he's in a much warmer place, and that hopefully all you guys are going to be with us in January. Sal, Rocky, Cenicola, don't take a sip yet, Sal. You're on. You're live, Sal. You're live. What's your thoughts? Canelo making the decision, forcing his team to say, hey, sign this fight. I want to fight this guy. What do you think?
I think it's great. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's a early Christmas gift that's going to take place middle of next year. I like that. Hey, you know what? You and I have always said that. If a fighter really wants to fight, even though he may be advised against it, by the powers that may be around him, suggestions that say otherwise, the fighter wants to fight a fighter. He's got to do it. And he should do it. And, Canelo obviously feels like what he had as a preview, when he had the first fight with Triple G, he learned, and you and I both have stated that, I think Canelo will probably improve drastically going into this fight with Triple G. And I just hope Triple G keeps his pedal on the metal a little more this time and closes out big. But I think it's great. I think we should have the fight. It should be signed, sealed, and delivered. It already should have been done so, but hey, guess what? We'll take it as a Christmas gift.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's something that is important, the fight. And, I was a little nervous about the possibility of Canelo maybe avoiding Triple G, but it's time. I mean, Triple G has clearly slowed down, and I think Canelo's got a better than good chance of winning the rematch. According to Eric Gomez, the president of Golden Boy, he says, we're close, we're advanced. Canelo really wants to fight. He gave us the green light to close the fight, and there are some important details we're working on to reach the final agreement. And once that happens, we will actually work on the contracts. I would have hoped they would have been working on those already. He says the focus is the rematch. That's what Saul wants. That's what the public wants. We are close. There are details that must be refined. Two things that we are working on, but we're close. Do you think that sounds like it's true, like Canelo is really forcing him? Or do you think that maybe Canelo is feeling some pressure and, wants the public to know that he wants to fight, but these two things that they're working on could be, outrageous demands or something that Triple G shouldn't fall into listening to? I think Triple G, needs to man up. I mean, he's a draw. People want to see him. Canelo's not as big as he seems to think he is. I mean, yes, he's got a huge fan base, et cetera, but I'm not so sure the boxing community feels that he's as big of a name in the sport as he thinks he is. What's your thoughts?
Well, he is very popular. He looks good out there in the ring, and he's got a decent story, and people are attracted to him. They like him. He's a somewhat of a hero, I'm sure, in Mexico. But I'm smiling at myself. You can almost see I'm laughing at myself. Isn't it ironic how this is becoming, it's unfolding the day or the weekend right after a spectacular showing from Billy Joe Saunders? Do you maybe think that maybe Canelo Alvarez rather fight Triple G than have to fight Billy Joe Saunders? Just food for thought. That's how my mind thinks.
Well, I mean, it's not. Listen, it's called options. And the truth of the matter is Billy Joe Saunders, fought his way, literally fought his way into the picture. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I gave Billy Joe Saunders no chance of doing much. I figured he was just a trinket holder. We both of us openly criticized him.
Thank you.
I'll fight Triple G. All I need is 18 months to prepare. Give me a break. And he comes back and he fights a guy. Now let's be real about David Lemieux. David Lemieux is a one-trick pony. He's a guy that comes at you and obviously had no. I know it bothers you, but he had no answer. He wasn't listening to his corner. He didn't know how to cut the ring off. I don't know if it's just a lack of skill set or if he took his opponent too easy or whatever. But at the end of the day, Billy Joe Saunders is the guy who rises to the top, and all of a sudden there's options. And speaking of Billy Joe Saunders, it was reported yesterday that Daniel Jacobs openly wants to fight Billy Joe Saunders. He's got an HBO date of April 28th in Brooklyn. HBO wants to fight. Wow. Daniel Jacobs wants to fight. Now it's up to Billy Joe Saunders. Wow. Will Billy Joe Saunders take that fight? We were talking about this yesterday, Sal.
Let me tell you.
The thing is, he says like this, his management says, we're not going to sit out 9 months and play games. Danny wants to be active, referring to Daniel Jacobs. He says, but if I'm Billy Joe Saunders' team, I'm probably holding out to fight the winner of Canelo Triple G rematch in September, but we do want to try and make this fight. Billy Joe Saunders looked great against Lemieux. We'll give him his respect for that. Danny legitimately wants to fight, but I don't know if Billy Joe Saunders or his promoter will take it. I think Danny's too high of a risk for Saunders for him not to take the chance, but would love for him to come over in April and fight us. So we'll see. We will extend the invitation, and if he sees and see if he takes it. If he doesn't, then we'll work on our plan B. Here's the thing, Sal.
Yes.
As Billy Joe Saunders tries to make the best decision for himself, financially, for his boxing career, not only financially for his boxing career, but for his family and stuff like that. I'm going to say this. We need to break this mold that Floyd Mayweather kind of set. You don't need to wait around and cherry pick an opponent. There's always going to be a big fight. And I look at a fight like this, and I know we're talking risk versus reward, but realistically, Sal, Billy Joe Saunders is in a win-win situation. All four of these guys are in a win-win situation, even if they lose the fight. And as long as they perform, their stock will go up. Case in point, David Lemieux was in a position to be that same guy. Perform well, have his stock rise, and have other opportunities present themselves. He failed. He looked terrible. His stock sank. You don't be surprised if you see David Lemieux fighting Daniel Jacobs in April. That could be a last-ditch effort for him to resurrect his career. But if I'm Billy Joe Saunders, I might want to take that fight against Daniel Jacobs because a win over Daniel Jacobs says a lot. It makes an argument that he's the best middleweight in the world. What's your thoughts?
Well, I think you're 100% correct. And, Daniel Jacobs, you got to love the guy. I mean, he challenges himself all the time, and he wants to fight the best because he knows he is the best in his mind, heart, and soul. And you got to give him that opportunity to prove it. And he's a warrior, and I love Daniel Jacobs. And I also love the fact that Billy Joe Saunders. I mean, I couldn't sleep, and I was looking at TV last night, and lo and behold, HBO replayed that fight all over again with Billy Joe Saunders and David Lemieux. So here I was watching the fight from start to finish all over again. And
wait a minute. Wait a second. Did Billy Joe Saunders win again?
You know what? It's like, hey, Bill, it's like when my pizzeria and my restaurant, I play that endless loop of all my fights. And sometimes, these people, I want to bet, say, hey, that's a new fight. I'm going to bet on the other guy.
Yeah.
No, but it's funny. He did win all over again. But what I did notice, here was the guy, and I love this. I love this because I love doing the same thing when I had the opportunity. But I love that Billy Joe Saunders came into a hostile territory. I mean, the fans booed him, and he knew it. He was not liked when he first came into the ring and everything else. And you're in David Lemieux's backyard. Why not? So I love the fact that this guy comes in, doesn't bat an eye, doesn't give a two hoots about what's going on, where he is. All he had on was the blinders and a mission to defeat David Lemieux in his backyard and embarrass him. And guess what? He did just that. And as you said earlier, David Lemieux had no answer, and his stock really did sink inside of 45 minutes. So, my hat's off to Billy Joe Saunders. Do I like him? I'm not a big fan. I respect and appreciate what he could do and how he did it. And I'm not too fuzzy and warm about him as a character or personality. But, yeah, guess what? He's a tough guy to beat right now. And I'm sure that, Canelo Alvarez, looking at all the options, I'm just going to say this. I think he'd rather fight Triple G, a partner he knows how to dance with, than probably taking a step in the ring with Billy Joe Saunders, who's a little more than just an enigma at this point.
The only issue, I mean, I love the fight. But
Me too.
The only issue, and I'm talking about Billy Joe Saunders against Daniel Jacobs, the only issue is I would think that Billy Joe Saunders has earned himself a fight at home. And I think that if Daniel Jacobs is willing to go to the UK, I think that fight could probably be made. But in the meantime, I think the only fight that Billy Joe Saunders would come back to the U.S. for, or actually he wasn't even in the U.S., he was in Canada.
No, Canada was a continent.
But the only time he would come back to the U.S., I think he has fought in the U.S. once before, maybe not, is to fight the winner of Triple G and Canelo. I mean, that's what makes the most financial sense. But anyway, speaking of financial sense, Tyson Fury. Now, just in case y'all forgot that famous one-hit wonder by Roy Jones Jr., in case y'all forgot, Tyson Fury, undefeated, 25-0, 18 knockouts. He had beaten Vladimir Klitschko. And then he kind of went off the deep end, He ended up losing all his titles because his boxing license was stripped. He had a substance abuse issue. Many people thought he had some mental issues. Ballooned up. He's probably, a donut away from 600 pounds right now. But make a long story short, he's back. And the UK anti-doping agency dropped their case against him. They believe that he ate non-castrated wild boar, which made him test positive for steroids, which I find pretty funny. But anyway,
even think of this stuff.
I know. It's like when the Mexican fighters. Oh, what do you mean? Well, it's from the beef. They put all the steroids in the beef. Yeah, okay. Well, but anyway. The truth of the matter is the powers that be expect him to be fully licensed by early 2018. And one of the fights that people are talking about, of course, is him against Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua is in control of the heavyweight division. According to the powers that be, specifically Eddie Hearn, he says, and I quote, "There's only two reasons that a fight between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua does not happen is going to be the negotiation of the financial split. Tyson Fury has lost all sense of reality in dealing with a fight with Anthony Joshua. He wants more than a 50-50 split, which is a joke. The second reason is that he can't even get himself into physical condition, which is going to be good enough to fight Anthony Joshua. He says, I've talked to Tyson Fury a number of times, about it, and I don't know if he was just having a laugh when he was saying that it won't be a 50-50 split, but we're not in a position to talk about that fight until he gets in shape and until he can actually prove that he can fight. Which makes a lot of sense to me, Sal. I don't want to see Tyson Fury go from the buffet line into the ring to fight Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua has too many other irons in the pot. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. I think being Tyson Fury's a namesake, and has a good fan base, I'm sure, and he does have an undefeated record, and he has fought some great opponents, and he's done a great job. But guess what? How many years ago was that? And, he did have his issues, that his mental stability was in question at the time. He did gain a lot of weight. He hasn't fought in a long time. So I think he's got to step up and get back in shape. He's got to do something. I think he needs at least a comeback fight against a decent opponent. And he's got to show the world that, guess what? I'm back on the world stage. I'm ready. And I want Anthony Joshua. But no way in high water or low did this guy demand off the bat that he wants more than 50% of the gate or this and that and anything else. He doesn't have that leverage, okay? He was almost laughed out of the game a couple of years ago with some of his antics. So I think this guy definitely should be humble, get back in shape, zip the lip, and get into the ring and show us what you can do. And then after the fight, come back and let's say, what can we do for you? Or what can they do for him? And that's the way it should happen. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. But.
Well, when you look at the guys that, because obviously everybody,
yeah.
I got to take a break, Sal. I almost forgot.
Billy C will be right back.
Broken air conditioning, $4,400. Failing refrigerator, $2,500. Don't let outrageous repair and replacement bills like these bust your budget. Get the First American Home Warranty Plan. And when a covered appliance or system breaks, we'll repair it or replace it for you.
We had a high-end dishwasher go kaput. They put it in a brand new dishwasher.
We have plans that cover air conditioning, most appliances, plus heating, plumbing, electrical systems, and much more. Plans start as low as $25 a month. Why let a major appliance or system breakdown bust your budget or go through the hassle of finding trustworthy service people? Last year alone, we saved our customers over $120 million. Don't wait until something breaks and you're stuck with a huge bill.
You save a lot of money. It's absolutely worth it.
If you don't have First American Warranty, get it.
Call 1-800-946-6234 for your free no-obligation quote.
This is important news for women using birth control medications and devices. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with a pseudotumor after using one of these birth control drugs or devices, you may be eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Contact the law firm of Davis & Crump right now if you or a loved one have used one of these birth control medications or devices and were diagnosed with a pseudotumor to see if you are eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Call now. Operators are standing by.
Listen to this important message. If you owe money to the IRS, you will want to hear this. Penalties and interest compound daily on your back taxes, putting you under a mountain of debt. Tax 10,000 has years of experience connecting people with tax resolution specialists. Working through the IRS Fresh Start program, they will handle all the necessary forms, and if you qualify, you may end up saving thousands of dollars. Call Tax 10,000 at 800-773-4604.
Are you currently on Medicare? In other words, do you carry the red, white, and blue Medicare card? If so, are you suffering from chronic back pain? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a pain-relieving back brace covered by Medicare at little to no cost, shipped directly to your home for free. These medical-grade back braces are ideal for lower back pain, arthritis, spinal disorders, and other chronic back problems. Will you qualify for a medical-grade back brace?
Call Back Brace America at 1-800-290-8300.
Check out BillyCBoxing.com now, or feel the wrath of the mighty mustache.
Oh, that hurts!
Why are you doing that to my face? I hate you.
That's BillyCBoxing.com. Consider this your warning. Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're watching and listening to The Billy C. Show. Glad you could be with us today. And just a programming note, we won't be doing a live show till January 2nd. So mark that one down on your calendar. And speaking of marking things down, don't forget to mark down January 19th, CPOMs. Be there. Sal and I are going to be doing another Billy C. Boxing event. We want you to be there with us. We got some food lined up for you, a cash bar, and we're going to show you not one, not two, not three, but 4 classic fights on the big screen that you get to watch and be part of our live audience for the filming of our next Billy C's Boxing Revisited. So make sure you make your plans now. Go to cpoms.com or just drop me an email and I'll hook you up. Sal, Anthony Joshua, I love this guy. I mean, not only as a fighter, but as a human being. I mean, he just, I have a hard time believing fighters all the time because, especially with the old line from Bob Arum, I was lying yesterday, but I'm telling the truth. I mean, today, a lot of fighters seem to follow that rule. But when it comes to Anthony Joshua, it seems like, he tells it like it is, and it is what it is, and he don't want to play games, and that's the end of that. And he said, well, the names that always come up when you talk about Anthony Joshua right now is Joseph Parker, of course, Deontay Wilder. That's the fight we all want, and Tyson Fury sprinkled in there now. Anthony Joshua said this the other day, yesterday actually. He says, we got to get our hands on another championship belt. He says, Joseph Parker is being very realistic in terms of when he's going to fight and the negotiations that are taking place right now. That's a fight that potentially could happen sometime in March or early April. Why do you say Parker first, you ask? He says, I don't like to give false promises, but I agree that Parker is more realistic in negotiations. As far as Wilder, he's nowhere close to being remotely realistic when in negotiations. He says, and as far as Tyson Fury, well, Tyson Fury has to get in shape before he can even fight anyone, let alone challenge me.
I love it.
I love it too. And I think that
it's factual.
But the truth of the matter here, Sal, is this is the truth of the matter. I mean, let's be real. The truth of the matter is simple. He's the guy. He's the drawing power. End of story. Deontay Wilder, listen, we want the fight. I think that fight, and I said this yesterday, and I'll say it again. Deontay Wilder and his advisement team, whether it be his manager, his advisor, his promoter, whatever, are not giving him the right information. You don't try to hold out for money that he's never going to get. But if he accepted the offer that they gave him, he creates a situation for himself, even if he loses, Sal, to be making way more money than he's ever made. He's 39-0 with 38 knockouts. He's never made $2 million. What makes him think all of a sudden he's going to demand $20 million or 50% or whatever the fight generates? I say he take the $7 million that they offered him, and then even if he loses, the guy's never going to fight for less than a couple of million after that. Ever. What's your thoughts?
That's how your marquee value goes up. It's easy, and you have a new benchmark now, and your $1 or $2 million fights that was your sky's the limit is no longer there. It's surpassed, and he can be a little bit more in control and say, hey, I'm not going to fight for less than $5 million or $4 million, whatever it is, and the networks and everybody else and those powers that may be will have to ante up and create that situation that will allow them that kind of income.
No, but here, listen, the way it works is like this. It's simple. It's business 101, except with boxing, right? The truth of the matter is a fighter builds up and you get value. And by the way, put an asterisk next to that, because most of the fighters of today, the way they build up the value is wrong, because they build up value and then they don't have the product. Case in point, Cletus Selden the other night. Star Boxing built him up to a position where he gets a big fight and he lays an egg. And now, I think his value drops. The key here is when you get the opportunity, the performance has to be justified. It has to be a justified performance that's good enough. And I think in Deontay Wilder's case, a guy who's never made $2 million, 39-0, 38 knockouts, demanding boatloads of cash to fight AJ, and he's never made $2 million. Reports that he was offered $7 million plus U.S. television rights is a huge dollar amount for Deontay Wilder. Even if he loses, the guy will never fight for less than a few million after that. And quite frankly, $7 million plus U.S. television rights after all expenses is pretty much life-altering money, Sal. And whether the guy wants to fight again if he loses, who cares? If he wins, he just created a $10 million a fight purse for himself from the rest of his career. It's stupid. They're misleading him by him holding out and fighting these other guys for a couple of million. Like you said yesterday, he's got to fight a bunch of fights. He could fight this one and then cash out with the next one, win, lose, or draw. I don't know. I think he's being misled. I really think that they're taking advantage of Deontay Wilder, his management. I really believe that.
Well, like we were saying yesterday, this guy can make $20 million in the next two fights and win, lose, or draw. He's set. He's fine. And even if he nets out of that whole thing, $6 to $10 million, he could probably avail himself a pretty good lifestyle and do other things. And you know what? By the way, it will not be his last fight. His next two fights, if they were to be with Anthony Joshua, with a rematch in mind. So, I mean, it is humbling maybe for him, but how they're advising him against that kind of pathway is really not the best direction or path or suggestions that he's getting.
No. We've got some emails to read. This first one's from Jesse. He says, hey, Billy C and Sal, I think the Joshua versus Wilder fight will happen, but it will happen at the end of the year, meaning I guess he means the end of next year. He says, I hope so. I think that, if they both have a fight early 2017, yeah, it would be fall of 2018. It would be fall of 2018. But I kind of lean towards Deontay Wilder, holding out more and maybe realistically taking place in 2019. But anyway, he says, I read and hear that Adrian Broner will face Omar Figueroa. Do you like this bout? Yeah, I like this bout. I mean, Adrian Broner, what a waste of talent. I just look at him as a waste of talent. He really, as a lightweight, he really was a quality fighter. I mean, you could, I think his personal, the way he is personally and the way his shtick is and act, I think it's old, and it's not. It's funny because he says AB about billions. He's nowhere near, but yeah, he Omar Figueroa is a realistic fight for him. Maybe he can turn the ship. He says, I read Danny Roman will face Ryo Matsumoto. Should be good bout to see how Danny fares against a top 20 fighter. Do you like Matsumoto's resume? Some of those fighters that fight over, in Japan and in Russia or whatever was Russia, and Europe and stuff. Sometimes you don't know how to gauge those guys, because you never hear of them. But I do think Matsumoto is a good fighter, and I like the fight, Danny Roman and against him if it fights. He says that I read that Wilder versus Ortiz is set for March 3rd at the Barclays Center. I haven't heard that yet, but he says, I think it was evident that these two were going to face each other after Ortiz's last bout. You mean that WWE stick that they had, that scam, that joke Putting Ortiz in with Daniel Martz. I mean, I say that because I promoted Daniel Martz. I had a couple of shows I did. I called a couple of shows with him. He is a nice guy, but very limited. I thought Ortiz looked old and slow, and I think Wilder will beat Ortiz. If this fight was taking place a year ago or even 2 years ago, Ortiz mops the floor with Deontay, but I'm not so sure now. That fight definitely had to happen. He says, what's next for Odaka after he beats Paraga? After he beat Paraga, how about Okada? That's Okada against Alex Suicido or Jose Cepeda or Ismael Barrioso. Any of those would be good. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you about Okada. I need fighters to fight, Sal. We need fighters to fight. I mean, that's what they do, I mean, give me a break, with all of the cherry picking. I mean, Floyd really set the sport back, and it's every time he's not involved in it as a fighter. I'm not saying about a promoter, because I wish Floyd would really go all out and focus on Mayweather Promotions, because I think that could really help the sport and keep him in the mix. But every time he's out of it, in terms of fighting in the squared circle, boxing flourishes. I don't know. Maybe it's a coincidence. He says Billy is the Inoue bout versus Johan Boyo, just to stay busy fight. It seems like it. Inoue has to stay busy. He's a young fighter, and he gets a lot of respect. He's in a tough weight class because there's hardly any fighters in that weight class. And the key is to stay busy. Go back in history and see all the great fighters stayed busy. This whole fighting once or twice a year is BS. And Jesse wants to say happy holidays to Billy and Sal. See, thank you very much, Jesse.
Thank you very much,
enjoy your interaction, and we'll look forward to the continuation of that in 2018. We're not taking a break here, so don't look for a break. We're giving you guys a treat. The next break will be at 9 when we do the Blast from the Past. This is from Joel. He says, hey, Billy C and Sal, what are your thoughts on Kovalev facing Igor Mikhailin at Madison Square Garden in March? I feel Kovalev will face someone. I guess he meant to say I felt Kovalev would face someone better, but if Bivol ends up facing Sullivan Barrera, that will be one hell of a fight. I would rather see that main event instead of Kovalev against Mikhailin because I expect Sergey to put away Igor without a problem. I don't like the fight. I think Kovalev, with all the respect I had for Sergey Kovalev, Sal, on his rise up and how we thought he was, unbeatable, and then him quitting against Andre Ward, I lost all respect for him. And now this road back is just a smokescreen. No, if he really wants to get back in the mix, Bivol is the guy he should go after. And I can't believe, just a side note, HBO the other day, and I try not to listen to these bozos all the time, but HBO really trying to sell the point that the light heavyweight division is so hot right now. How hot is it? I mean, you got Sergey Kovalev, who's I've lost respect. You agree? You got Sullivan Barrera. You got Bivol. You got some of these guys. It's hot if they fight each other. It's not hot if they find some other slugs to throw them in with, and everybody walking around with belts. Then it's the same as any other division, don't you think?
I think so, and I think the hot divisions right now in order, probably the middleweight division, the welterweight division, and the heavyweight division. It's like a matter of opinion, yes, but that's where a lot of the action, a lot of the big fights are right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. Joel says, I was curious, what was your and Sal's favorite fight of the year if you could pick one? And then he says, I'd probably go with Klitschko, AJ. Listen, and then he closes by saying, thanks for everything you guys do for us, your fans. I want to wish you both a very happy holidays and a happy and healthy new year. Thank you very much, Joel. We definitely wish you all the best as well. I know he's in the middle of his holiday right now, and we hope nothing but the best for you and a great 2018 as well. As far as my favorite fight, Sal, I go with AJ and Klitschko because of a couple of things. There was a lot of great fights this year, no question.
A lot of
them. A lot of them. I mean, listen, let's face it. It started in January of 2017.
It did.
But the truth of the matter is, the reason why, if when people ask me what I feel the fight of the year was in 2017, and again, I'm going to emphasize we had a plethora of fantastic fights this year. I say Joshua Klitschko only because of a couple of things. Number one, it was an exciting fight. I mean, very rarely do we see exciting heavyweight fights anymore. That's number one. Number two, it had drama. It showed heart. It showed determination. I mean, it was like I hate to say it because I can't stand when and I was shocked that Dax referred to it too yesterday, but I can't stand when people refer to Rocky movies as they're comparing something with real boxing and they compare. But I do want to compare it to a Rocky movie, and the reason why I say it is because it was Hollywood. It was like you can write a better script than what took place. But the main reason, aside from all of the excitement, as the heavyweight goes, so does boxing. And this was a significant fight that really lifted the sport. Not only did it lift, and I agree with what you said a minute ago about the heavyweight division being being so hot right now, but that fight really turned focus on the heavyweight division, and I think overall it helped the sport. So the significance of that fight is why I have it as my fight of the year. What's yours, Sal?
I remember there were some great wars we saw. I can't even remember who we saw Keith Thurman, we saw this one, there were so many great fights. I mean, Anthony Joshua, yes, it's got to be in the forefront because of all the significant value that you just added. And, it was the passing of the baton. And, I also use my spring action leaping off the couch screaming kind of indicator of which fights were that exciting for me. And Anthony Joshua and Klitschko definitely gave me that kind of jumping off my couch, like, wow, yeah, that kind of enthusiasm, because it was so incredible that the ebb and flow, and that the body, the soul, the hearts, you saw that there in both fighters. So that definitely is going to rank in definitely my top three of the year. But there were quite a few good ones that I did have a lot of welcoming to. I think it was great. I think it was a great year. We were fortunate enough to see some fantastic fights, and but Klitschko and definitely Joshua is definitely going to be in that top three for me.
Another email. This is from my man Johnston. You can. He put some stuff up on our website, too, so check out his column. He says, hey, Billy C and Sal, officially today, Eddie Hearn finalized a fight between two of his prized cruiserweights, Lawrence Oakley, who's 7-0 with 6 knockouts, and Isaac Chamberlain, who's 9-0 with 4 knockouts. The bitter London rivals will go head-to-head at the O2 Arena on February 3rd and look to settle a score that's been building up for months. The pair have been at war on social media, and Oakley said, I think it's going to be a bloody, brutal fight. I said when I first turned professional, I'm not here to mess around. I want to take risks and push on. Chamberlain has done a lot of talking, and on February 3rd, we'll see if he can back up his words. It's one for the fans, a thriving domestic division. People will finally see me come out of the cage. Chamberlain said, it's been a long time coming. I'm pleased we finished and signed off. Now that it's done, we can both focus on the fight. It's a great fight for British fans. Nothing has been given to me, and I still have that underdog mentality. Everything I want, I have to go and get it. I've earned my stripes. That made me a lot stronger of a fighter, and that's going to show on February 3rd. I want to knock him out. I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to train hard. I'm going to knock him out. He says the pair will head a stacked card, including Natasha Jones, who's 4-0. With 4 knockouts, taking on Reese Bellotti, who's 11-0 with 10 knockouts. And Ben Jones is taking on Ben Jones, who's 22-6. He says another fighter to watch out for is Ted Cheeseman. He's 12-0 with 8 knockouts when he takes on Carson Jones. Wow, that's a big fight, 40-12. Also on the bill is Oakley's Rio Olympic teammate, Joshua Butassi, who's 3-0 with 2 knockouts. O'Hara Davies, 16-1 with 13 knockouts, and Felix Cash, who's 7-0 and 5 knockouts. He says, I'm somewhat surprised that Eddie Hearn has finally given in to the demands of both fighters who have been very vocal about fighting each other, especially considering that neither have got at least 10 pro fights yet. Saying that, I'm looking forward to a great fight. There's absolutely nothing wrong with losing. The only damage it could do is derail their careers for 18 months or so. If anything, it shows younger generation that the O means absolutely nothing, and good fighters can fight each other instead of having a protected record. Listen, thanks for the email, Johnson. And I can't agree. Listen, I can understand why a promoter might be hesitant, Sal. But let me tell you something. This is the kind of fights that made boxing great in its heyday, in the golden era between in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, all right, and into the 50s as well. That's what took place. And what it does is it creates rivalries. You know, in this case, it's already a rivalry. But, you know, in the States, we'd have neighborhood against neighborhood, the Italians against the Irish night, you know, whatever, you know, and exactly. That everybody's so afraid to build stuff like that today. But that's what created rivalries. You know, every single town had a boxing arena, and it was popular, the sport. And the reason is because it developed a home base of fans that followed their guy. We don't have that today. It's hard to put on a club level show. You know, even the young fighters are demanding too much to fight. You know, it's either, listen, sign up and be a fighter and do what these two guys are doing, fight each other. And I agree with Johnston. Losing a fight it shouldn't mean that your career is shot. And let me tell you something about these two guys fighting each other now, Sal. This fight will help both of those fighters, regardless of who wins or loses. Having the experience fighting a guy that's equal to yourself after 10 fights or so, or in this case, even less than 10, I think is a good thing. It helps you get better. What's your thoughts?
I think you're 100% correct there. And, you know, what a rivalry or scenario this could breed for a future. I mean, let's say they get in the ring and one beats the other. And guess what? If they both go on in a career in good paths and stay on top of the game and improve and increase their level of competition and their significant value in the weight division, hey, who's to say they can't re-meet on that revenge note and 10 fights later? And what a great scenario that would be. That's, as you suggested and said. That's how the rivalries were created. That's how rematches occurred. That's how it all started. And why not? This is a nice little seed to plant, and we hopefully will see it come to fruition a couple of years from now. Let's see what happens today.
Got another email. This one's from my man Mitch. He says, the subject is Bullseye. He says, see, Billy, this is why AJ versus Wilder ain't going to happen until 2019. It's a game of bully, and the rules are everybody beats up on AJ. The good thing is Eddie Hearn is going to call stuff out before the guys spin it. If Hearn didn't say anything today, then tomorrow's spin would have been Fury saying, we tried to make a deal with AJ, but he's scared of us, so we lowered our asking price, and he priced himself out. Joseph, Deontay, Tyson, you're not going to get a 50-50 split, but in this case, Fury wants a lot more than a 50-50 split.
That's ridiculous.
He says, I'm glad Hearn spoke up. And, we talked about that earlier. He's sending a link to a story that talks about that. He says, secondly, Billy, I swear that the promoters and the boxers listen to your show. He says, every time you bring up a topic, the next day it gets addressed. He says, here's a case in point. And he refers to the Canelo Triple G fight. He says, you talked about it on yesterday's show, and we get a press release that gets sent out that they're negotiating the contracts right now. He says, this has happened too many times this year to be a coincidence. Every time you and Sal address something, 15 to 24 hours later, it gets addressed with a press release or some other type of action. Do you really think these are coincidences?
I love his train of thought. And hey, it's like Salazzo telling Michael Corleone, "Hey kid, you think too much of me, kid. Yeah, I'm not that powerful." But I'll tell you what, Billy, we never know who may be listening, and it just takes a little seed to plant somewhere, and somebody runs with it. So, guess what? If we're the Johnny Appleseeds of the boxing world, hey, let's go for it, pal.
Well, if they're listening and they're maybe the best thing to do is have one of the major promoters give me a call, and I'll be glad to work as a consultant. Maybe we can save each other some time and effort, right? So thanks for the email, Mitch, and I hope you have a great holiday. This next one is from Willie. And on this email, he says, a sad man until the first show of the new year. He says, hey, Billy C. Well, here's the last email from me for 2017. I can't believe I'm saying that already. This year has flown by so quickly. Thanks for the wonderful fun we've had for the last 12 months with you, Sal, and Dax, and Larry, and Jeremy C., and everyone else. He says, between you all, you've brightened up my life by giving me something extra special to look forward to each day, to the point that now I can't imagine my life without my daily dose of Billy C. It's like medicine to me. We've had a fantastic year of boxing in all the divisions, and with all the new talent we've been keeping an eye on starting to shine through, it's looking like next year is going to be even better. I hope it continues to go in the right direction. He says, I'll finish off by wishing you and all your family and friends and the dog a wonderful and happy Christmas and New Year. He says, take care. You guys are the best out there. We respect you. Thank you so much, Willie. And I'd like to wish you Willie. And your family a very happy holidays and a prosperous New Year. And we couldn't do it without you guys, that's for sure. So I appreciate that 100%. One more email. This one's from Coach. And he says, hey, guys, how is this for odds? He said, this past Saturday, on a Mung Hoon Song, Daeon Promotions, 11-bout card in South Korea, there were 9. Only Coach could come up with this. Only Coach could come up with this because he's the only guy following a 11-bout card in South Korea. So congratulations to Coach. He said that on an 11-bout card in South Korea, there were 9 upset majority decisions and 2 draws. He says, and while I'm speaking of odds, even after the most level-headed sports fans have seen through the WWE-styled scam hyped as Mayweather versus pro-debuting boxer Conor McGregor, he says, I just have to point out that my prediction of fraud Mayweather taking his checkbook into a UFC cage is inching closer. What do you think? Let me tell you something. If people know that I'm not, if anybody knows, everyone that watches this show knows that I'm not a big Mayweather fan. Yeah, I know. It's a little shocking. But I'm not a big Mayweather fan. But let me tell you this: if Floyd Mayweather gets into a cage and fights an MMA fight, and as long as he's not fighting a guy with no arms and no legs, I would give Floyd Mayweather all the credit in the world for doing that. I don't even care if he wins, if he loses. The one thing is, if he loses, it doesn't go on his boxing record, so he can still, brag about that. But the truth of the matter is, as long as it's a guy that has both arms and both legs, I give him credit. I do not think it's going to happen. Joining us right now, and hopefully we'll get his thoughts on this, Sal, with me and Sal is Dax Khan. Dax, Mayweather in a cage, you think it's possible?
Anything's possible.
You think it's going to happen?
Whether or not it's going to happen, I don't think so, but anything's possible.
I don't think it's going to happen. What do you think, Sal?
No way. No way would he ever subject himself to real harm's way. And you know what? He can go in with a rank amateur MMA guy with some experience, and that guy will probably hurt him, dismantle him, and I can't give him that much of a deficit. But you know what? No, it's gonna be another world for him to experience. And like I said, just like he had so easily handled, and yes, maybe even carried Conor McGregor. guess what? You go in that MMA cage with a good veteran that knows what he's doing, and Mayweather is going to have a little dose of reality that he's going to wish he never went in there.
It's not going to happen.
It ain't going to happen.
No, it won't happen. It's the rhetoric. It's the fluff without the stuff.
Floyd Mayweather can't not be in the limelight. Anytime some other fighter gets some press, Floyd does something just to keep his name in there. He doesn't have vices aside from gambling. He's not into drugs. He's not into alcohol. But I'll tell you what, he's into his ego. Hey, Dax, I appreciate you coming on today to give us your thoughts on your favorite fights or what you feel were the best fights of 2017. There's a lot of them, so let us know what you think.
All right, my five aren't. Not every one of these fights were the highest of profile fights, and each one was my favorite for a different reason, but they were all great fights, definitely. Starting out last year, you mentioned this fight earlier, was the Badou Jack and James DeGale fight in January. You had the two best 168-pound fighters in the world. They went in there at the Barclays Center, which is becoming one of the most prized or established venues in the world, and they went in and they put on such a high-quality fight that ended in a majority draw, but without controversy. Badou Jack goes down in the first round. He gets up. It looks like James DeGale is going to, really do what the British fighters have been doing and control this and put on a show. But, Badou Jack, he comes back and he wins those middle rounds. He drops James DeGale for the first time in James's career. Both guys, it was a give and take fight. It was so closely contested. The biggest score difference was by Glenn Feldman, that 114-112 in favor of Badou Jack. Drew Letterman and Steve Weisfeld had it 113-113, and there was no complaints because the fight was that good, and they actually set the bar for all the other top fights coming for the rest of the year, in my opinion. And my second fight was also on that card, and that was the Levin Kaitrov and the Emmanuel Alim fight. That was on the undercard. They were both undefeated fighters, Kaitrov being billed as the prospect to watch out for. Alim was the undefeated fighter whose record was more or less built up, but he would look good on paper for this prospect to have a win over this undefeated fighter. But Emmanuel Alim, he says, not tonight. He goes right after Kaitrov. They trade big punches. Alim tees off on Kaitrov in the center of the ring. Kaitrov goes down. He gets up. He pins Alim on the ropes. He tees off on him. Then there's this back and forth action. There's no give and take. Both guys are capitalizing on the biggest moments of their career. And then finally, in a dramatic fashion, we mentioned Hollywood, talked about Rocky yesterday. He mentioned today, Alim comes and he shakes, he rocks Kaitrov to the point that Eddie Claudio literally had to step in and stop Kaitrov from falling to the mat and taking more punishment. It was exciting, and every other fight after this year, from that, they had to set that bar. They had to meet the standards of James DeGale and this fight.
Yeah, two great fights. That DeGale fight with Badou Jack was fantastic. That was a great one. There's so many to pick from this year, right?
Yeah, there's a lot, but these were my favorites, and it's not always because of what takes place in the ring, but the story around it is you have to take those and think about the whole situation, and that's what makes a fight great. As I was stating yesterday, when you watch the story unfold and you watch the careers of the fighters, and you see these moments, and that's what makes them great. My third fight of the year was the Juan Francisco Estrada versus the Carlos Cudras fight on the Superfly card. These guys are both former Roman Gonzalez opponents. Roman Gonzalez had wins over them. They were actually on the co-main event, and they were the mandatory for the winner of Sorung Visi and Roman Gonzalez in the rematch. That title was once held by Cudras, and he lost that to Gonzalez, who had lost that earlier in the year to Rungvisai. And Gonzalez actually had a win over Juan Francisco Estrada, who was stepping up into the higher weight class. One guy controls the first portion of the fight with his power. He's the more aggressive fighter. You think he's going to go in there, and he's actually going to bully and take control in terms of Cudras, because that's what he did with Roman Gonzalez. With their fight that was so razor thin. A lot of people, in my opinion, thought that Roman Gonzalez might have lost lost that fight. And then what happens is Juan Francisco Estrada shows that, you know what, it's not always about power. It's about boxing finesse and ability. And he comes back and he takes control of the rest of it. And, finally, he ends up dropping Kudras. And that fight, again, was so close. All three judges had the same 113, 114 across the board. And, again, there was not a single complaint. And that fight was so closely contested at such a high level. That knockdown that Estrada scored over Kudras is what actually decided that.
Yeah, another great. That fight I totally forgot all about, to tell you the truth. I mean, there was so many of them.
And the truth is, something, considering the fact that both guys lost to Gonzalez, and the fact that Kudros has a win over Rungvisai, and these guys were the undercard, that tells you, something. The undercard guys are not always, the co-fin. They may be better than the main event guys, and this is a situation where we might see that. And in such a small division, to see these guys all perform at such a high level, that's what makes it exciting.
And the final...
I'm sorry?
No, and what's the last one?
No, I have two more.
Oh,
My third one, of course, you mentioned already, was the Anthony Joshua and Vladimir Klitschko fight. It wasn't supposed to play out the way it did. Vladimir Klitschko was done before the fight was ever signed. He had just lost a very boring, uninspired fight to Tyson Fury, ending his almost decade-long reign as the division king. A guy who was declared so boring because he was just so dominant and nobody could really challenge him. People were almost happy that he left. Then he comes in and goes to war with the young champion, the kid that people feel is going to usher in the next era of heavyweight boxing and is going to be the next great heavyweight. Klitschko actually drops Joshua. Joshua gets up. He shows that he has a chin. He answers these doubts on, what happens if Joshua gets hit. Does Joshua actually have heart? Joshua comes back and he goes after Klitschko. He's landing these monster punches on the champion that always fought safe, the champion that supposedly had the China chin. That uppercut alone that Vladimir Klitschko ate that snapped his head up. You see pictures and you actually see the muscles of Klitschko's head, flexing because Klitschko's neck and his face is just, contorted backwards. And Klitschko, he walks through that and he keeps fighting forward. Eventually Klitschko ends up being taken out, but he goes out on his shield. He said, something, I'm going to show what I'm really about. My decade-long reign was not a fluke. I was not a boring fighter. I was a fighter who controlled this division for a reason. And if this young fighter's going to come in there and he's going to be the future of it, something, I want him to go in there and I want him to show everybody this is the future of the sport. I'm passing the torch. I didn't pass the torch in a boring fight. I didn't get outboxed. We fought at a high level, and this is what boxing is about. This is what heavyweight boxing is about, and this is what has always made the heavyweight division the greatest division in all of boxing.
No doubt. Now, after all those fights, I'm curious to know what your top fight was, because that's a tough one to top for me, Dax. And all of the significance behind that fight and how it carried the rest of the sport, like Sal and I was saying earlier. It's hard to think of one above it, but I'm sure you got one. What is it?
I have two. I spoke about this I think maybe yesterday, earlier or last week, was the John Molina Jr. versus Ivan Redkic fight. Again, like I said, not all these are the highest profile of the greatest fighters. This was one of those fights where neither guy was going to climb the ladder with a win, and lose wasn't really going to hurt either one. But John Molina Jr. has always been a warrior. Early in that fight, he looked so old. He looked slow in that first round. You really thought that Redkic was just going to slam the coffin, put the nail on the coffin of the lid of John Molina's career. He hurts John Molina up. John Molina gets up. Then what happens is he sends John Molina to the canvas. John Molina goes back to his corner after the second round on rubber legs. You're saying to yourself, something, if Redkic lands one or two more punches on Molina, this fight's going to be over. And what does John Molina do? He recovers in between rounds in spectacular fashion, almost superhuman fashion. He comes out and he goes after Ivan Redkic, and he hurts Redkic, and they're trading punches. And Redkic, he thinks, okay, you know what, I have him. He comes after him, and then John Molina, he's going backwards, and then he hits Molina. Then Redkic, he starts showboating. And what happens after that? John Molina lands a huge punch on Redkic just after Redkic starts showboating, and Molina smells blood, and he goes right after him. The second it landed, it went right after him, and he pins Redkic on the ropes, and he lets loose a barrage of punches that Redkic ends up falling forward to the canvas. And as he's getting up again, almost like a Hollywood movie, Redkic has to be saved by the referee, and John Molina shows, something, just when you think I'm done, I'm not done.
It's true.
I like it.
It's true, right, Sal?
Oh, absolutely. That's what makes a fighter a fighter. I mean, not just that incident, but that's the heart, that's the passion, that's the mind, that's the will of a fighter to never give up. It's like fight one more round. When you think you've had it, just come out and fight that one more round and give it. And that's it.
What's your top one, brother?
My fight of the year has to be Miguel Mikey Roman against Orlando Salido.
Wow.
You know, you have here again. You know, you have here two guys who've had hard luck careers. Orlando Salido, a guy who's always been brought in as the opponent. He's always been brought in the last minute. Again, he's always been brought in as the guy who wasn't supposed to win. Orlando Salido is never a guy who was overly skilled. They even disrespected this guy so much to the point that they thought Vasyl Lomachenko, forget about he fouled him, forget about he came in overweight, just they thought they were going to bring this guy in and use him as a showcase. And Orlando Salido says, you know something, I'm nobody to showcase. You want to win over me, you're going to come in here, you're going to fight a man. I'm not a puppet. You know, he's been in there with Mikey Garcia, Vasyl Lomachenko, Juan Manuel Lopez, Yuriorkis Gamboa, Guerrero, Castellanos, name it. Same thing Miguel Roman, he's been, you know, in there with so many guys, so many top names. He's come up short, he's come in at the last minute, taking the short purses. These guys have literally fought for purses, half of what we see a prospect coming up who's never spilt a drop of blood, who's never beaten a name, gets on a regular basis for an ESPN show. You know, they go in there and they waged a war. It was a war. It was a skillful war, despite what some people think. You know, to stand there, to trade, to work that body inside Sal, you know, as a former fighter, to know exactly where to land those punches, to use that physicality the way they do. That takes skill. That's something that you don't do and you don't learn in one or two fights. These guys had over a combined 120 fights apiece. They had over a combined 25 losses. And you know something, you would say to yourself, how's this going to end? Both these guys have really lost in horrible fashion. And, you know, when they won, but it seems like Salido would be the guy to win. But then, you know, Salido, this is a guy here, all those wars, 60-something fights. You know, he goes down, he gets up, he hurts Roman hurts him. You're sitting there, you're on the edge of your seat. Social media is going crazy. I'm screaming and yelling at the screen. And then all of a sudden, that one big punch, Orlando Salido goes down. And from all those wars, you seen the look on his face. His heart wanted to fight, but his mind said, you know what? I want to, but his body just, I can't do it anymore. Salido came to terms with that. You seen that expression on his face. He knew it was coming sooner or later, but you know what? He didn't expect it to happen there. But on the other hand, what made that moment beautiful is he was actually happy with that. He knew he was in there with a guy who had a career very much like his, with less success, of course, but a hard luck kid who's always come in there as the opponent, last minute, short money. And when in the post fight, as they're talking and you're looking at Salido had this look on his face, and when they hugged, it was almost like he said, if anybody was going to do this to me, I'm glad it was you, not some world champion, not somebody with a big backing, not somebody who, win or lose, is going to get another big fight. Somebody, you know, who's had a career like I have, and somebody who is going to be able to benefit from this. I'm glad it went out this way. I'm glad it went out my way. And you have to appreciate that in boxing. If you don't appreciate that in boxing, you don't appreciate these backstories. Like I always say, you're not a boxing fan. You're not a fan of the sport. You're a fight fan. And guys like Salido, guys like John Molina are the guys that you have to appreciate in this sport, because they make the sport. They make the stars. You can't be a star without guys like this, because guys like this are going to give you star-making performances. And for the fans, guys like this are going to let you know whether or not these guys that are supposed to be stars really are stars when they step in there against them, because they're going to answer any questions and any doubts there is about anybody they go in there against. And when they win, they win. When they lose, they lose. But you know what? No matter what, you know there was a warrior, and you earned your money, and they earned their money, and it was beautiful. And that's what you have to like, and you have to appreciate a guy like Orlando Salido for everything he did.
Great.
Well said.
I really. Dax, great job on your fights of the year. And you caught me off guard with that one, but you justified it every step of the way. So I appreciate all the time and effort that you put into that. And we got some great things cooking for 2018, and you're part of it with that new segment we're going to be doing, the four of us, you and Sal, myself, and Alex. So we'll be doing that. That kicks off next year. It was supposed to kick off this year, but man, did this year fly by. But speaking of Alex, We got to go. We got to do the blast from the past. Sal, I'll be talking to you in a little bit. Dax, I'll be talking to you like we always do over the weekend or whatever. But,
all right, everybody else, enjoy your holiday, and we'll see you in 2018.
All right,
Take
guys.
care,
Listen, Dax, great job. And listen, I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, blast from the past. This week, we're doing Henry Cooper. That would be Sir Henry Cooper to you because, well, he's a sir.
Billy C will be right back.
Snacking has never been this exciting. At Graze.com, we combine wholesome ingredients with the flavors we all love to create over 100 exciting snacks. Like these. We'd love to send you a Graze sampler box for free. Just go to Graze.com, enter the code ENJOY36, and we'll mail your free box to your home or office. Join thousands of Grazers already in love with our exciting snacks. So come to Graze.com for your first box free.
Broken air conditioning, $4,400. Failing refrigerator, $2,500. Don't let outrageous repair and replacement bills like these bust your budget. Get the First American Home Warranty Plan. And when a covered appliance or system breaks, we'll repair it or replace it for you.
We had a high-end dishwasher go kaput. They put it in a brand new dishwasher.
We have plans that cover air conditioning, most appliances, plus heating, plumbing, electrical systems, and much more. Plans start as low as $25 a month. Why let a major appliance or system breakdown bust your budget or go through the hassle of finding trustworthy service people? Last year alone, we saved our customers over $120 million. Don't wait until something breaks and you're stuck with a huge bill.
You save a lot of money. It's absolutely worth it.
If you don't have First American Warranty, get it.
Call 1-800-946-6234 for your free no-obligation quote.
This is important news for people who had a hip replacement and then had to have additional surgery as the result of a faulty hip implant or were diagnosed with high levels of metal in the blood, known as metallosis. You may have a right to a cash award and medical expenses. If you have been diagnosed with high levels of metal in your blood or have required more surgery because of hip implant failure, call the law offices of Davis & Crump right now. Our first consultation is free and we don't get paid unless you get paid. Call now. Operators are standing by.
Are you currently on Medicare? In other words, do you carry the red, white, and blue Medicare card? If so, are you suffering from chronic back pain? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a pain-relieving back brace covered by Medicare at little to no cost, shipped directly to your home for free. These medical-grade back braces are ideal for lower back pain, arthritis, spinal disorders, and other chronic back problems. Will you qualify for a medical-grade back brace?
Call Back Brace America at 1-800-290-8300.
Now back to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C., the only radio host man enough to take a punch from Mike Tyson.
Wait a minute, man. Hold on there. Jeremy, man, I need you to take this one, all right?
Wait, what? No way. I can't do this.
Need I remind you I'm Billy C., damn it? Now put on that mustache and get in there.
Hey, look at me. I'm Billy C. Crap.
Undisputed heavyweight champion of Boxing Talk Radio. It's Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're watching and listening to the Billy C. Show. Don't forget about our after the holiday party. Yeah, it's a tongue twister, but it's you get the point, right? Join us January 19th. It's a Friday night at the beautiful Sea Palms Resort in St. Simon's Island, or on St. Simon's Island, where we are going to have, we're going to show you not one, not two, not three, but 4 classic fights. You're going to be part of our live audience while we rebroadcast them. We're going to have some food for you. We're going to have a cash bar. We're going to have some celebs there. Be there because you missed the last one. Don't miss this one. Just reach out to cpalms.com or drop me an email, billy@talkinboxing, TalkinBoxing.com for information. Well, it's that time. again for our blast from the past. This is another one that's requested by one of yous guys, a viewer and listener. And if you want to request one, just drop me an email. Today's blast from the past is being brought to us in part by KOFantasyBoxing.com. Check it out, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. Join today. And this week's blast from the past is also being brought to us in part by the Title Bout Championship computer game, which keep an eye on because we are going to be doing our new segment next year, this new year coming up, which features more play from the Title Bout Championship computer game. And this week's blast from the past features a former world title challenger, but he was also a longtime British and Commonwealth and European heavyweight champion. His name, Sir Henry Cooper. And telling us all about Sir Henry Cooper is my man, Sir Alex Pierpaoli. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning, Billy C. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Getting ready for that guy in a red suit to squeeze his ass through the chimney. You know how it is. And I just got to remember not to have a fire going. I don't want to miss out on all the Billy C. goods.
That's right. And damn YouTube for all their copyright rules. Because I love to hear a little of that.
I know. Tell me about it. You're right.
Christmas carols with their
copyright
laws.
I can't do it anymore. Every day I have to claim. It's my own stuff. It's my own video. It's my own property. It's every day I go through this with them. It's so nerve-wracking, and I try to put the show up there just so people can watch it or whatever. And it's cumbersome every day. And you want to know? You remember the bit? That we used to do coming back from a break? It was Bill Clinton.
Oh yeah.
Right. I keep getting flagged. Now you know how many years I used that? I'm getting flagged for the background music. Hail to the Chief.
Oh, bro!
Can you? I know, and they keep somebody's spending a hell of a lot of time looking through all our shows, picking out those commercials, and they're doing it because every day I'm getting like 4 or 5. And you know what I'm doing now? Deleting them. So all of the shows, and we've had many shows up on YouTube. You're starting to notice a lot of them disappearing because any copyright. Violation or anything, I'm deleting. So, anyway, let's move on. Enough about me, Alex. Enough about me.
I guess the only way to get around that these days is to just use all the just the freebie sound effects they give you in the programs, which are all fair use type things. But otherwise, yeah, it's a pain.
Alex, I'm getting flagged for some of the commercials that are mine. I have to prove. I know. I have to prove that they're mine. It's got my number on it. It's got my account on it.
It's got to be. They must use some sort of program that.
It's a tool. Yeah, it's called It's called a takedown tool. They call it.
Oh.
But anyway, I think we just got to create Jeremy some more work. He's got to get the band back together and start creating us some stuff. Even that. You remember when I went through a time where I was playing some band like early, bands starting out.
Yep.
Once they sign a record deal, they go back and want all the credit for that. And old funny. Billy C's made Ugats off that, So,
yeah, it's like, thanks for that help that ladder up. Right back up with me now.
Exactly. Tell us about Sir Henry Cooper.
Sir Henry Cooper. Yes, this guy was, if he had one knock against him, he was just thin-skinned. And as a child of narcissist, I find I can relate to that because I'm a thin-skinned guy too. Anyway, he was born on May 3rd, 1934 in Westminster, London, England. And he's actually just about 20 minutes older than a twin brother, George, who also had sort of thin skin. He did at one point talk about it. He said that he thinks that it's just something genetic, that the brow, the bones of his brow were just a little sharper or something, and he had a tendency to cut. And it was his undoing in some of his biggest matchups. But he was born into a boxing family. His dad boxed. His grandfather was supposedly a bare knuckle fighter, and even his mother at some point supposedly was able to box. Rather, not his mother, his grandmother. But he was brought up at Bellingham in southeast London, and he at 15, himself and his brother, they both started training at the Eltham Club. And he went 73-11 as an amateur, had a really good amateur record, won a couple of ABA titles. And he actually sort of backed into the sport. He lost his first 4 amateur fights, and he blamed his mom's bread pudding for that. But he was a flat-footed puncher. He had some pretty good skills, and he had an incredible left hook. They referred to it as Henry's hammer, and sorry for that. That was bad accent.
You tried.
I tried, yeah. But this punch, Bill, punch was so impressive. I think they did this also, the U.S. Department of Ways and Means or something, at some point measured Rocky Marciano's punch.
Yeah.
Well, aeronautical engineers in Britain measured Henry Cooper's left hook at one point, and they used this special camera, which was one of the highest tech, camera available, and it was able to shoot 6,000 frames per second. And they found that over 7 inches, his punch was actually 3 times faster than a Saturn rocket. And in the course of traveling 7 inches, it was able to generate 4.5 tons of force upon impact. So Henry Zammer was quite a punch.
Well, he only had out of 40 wins, he had 27 knockouts. He had less than a 50% knockout ratio. They should recalibrate that machine or something, right?
Well, I guess you could have the punch, but it's another thing about getting it to the
right. It's you have the punch. It's another thing about if you can land it in the right spot. It's like lightning; it never lands in the same spot twice. But he had a long pro career, 17 years. Started in 1954, went all the way to 71, and he was a world traveler. He traveled all over the place, didn't he?
Yeah, he sure did. And at one point, it was funny. He, if you notice in his record, he had a couple of fights in a row in Germany, and he was bouncing back from a loss, and he went off to Germany and fought. And I saw there's an interview on YouTube, and the interviewer asked him. He says, "So you went to Germany to find this doctor who was going to teach you how to relax?" And he said, yeah, she was a female about 20 years old.
You're right about some of the early stoppages and the latter stoppages were technical knockouts due to cuts. And he fought some experienced fighters in Germany and in the UK, of course. He picked up his Commonwealth or British Empire title in 1957 when he beat he tried for it in 1957 3 times, I might add, and lost. He finally picked it up in 1959 against Brian London. But the fight that I wanted to talk about was he fought Zora Foley twice. And I believe that the Zora Foley fight, especially the first one in 1958, which got him in a position to fight for the British heavyweight title again, a couple of months later, where he picked it up, was a career-defining fight. He beat Zora Foley in a 10-round decision in October of 1958, but he did fight Zora Foley again in 1961 and didn't fare as well. But Zora Foley kind of, although he had traveled throughout Europe, Zora Foley kind of put him on the worldwide map. And I believe, even though it was several years later, I believe that this fight catapulted him to some of the bigger fights against the bigger names that we'll talk about in a little bit.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. And I think at the time Zora Foley was one of the top ranked guys. So, I mean, that's one, even, his own words, one of the things he says in this interview on YouTube that I watched is one of the biggest compliments that you could pay to any boxer is that he fought the best of his era. And Zora Foley was one of the best of his era. And that's, that first win definitely was, Foley was favored, and that was a big win, although he was bleeding badly in those last couple of rounds, and he had been dropped. That is a big victory. Then he wins over Brian London. But yeah, in the rematch, he claimed he didn't really take it seriously, and he got stopped by Foley in 2. That's the thing that's unfortunate, I think, about Cooper, and probably where he suffers in terms of, he's not in the Hall of Fame. If you look at, his record against Hall of Famers, he did fight 3 of them. But he was beaten each time by Ingemar Johansson. He was stopped by Floyd Patterson. He was stopped by Ali. He was stopped twice on cuts. Johansson and Patterson were, legit TKOs. He was down, and the ref waved it off. Yeah, that definitely, after that Foley win, he was one of the top heavies, and that's what led to the first fight, with, at that time, the young Muhammad Ali was still Cassius Clay, and of course that fight is the one that had the famous long rest period, which it's kind of interesting because in some places it says it's 66 seconds, other places say it's 2 minutes and 30 seconds, But that was where one thing that does happen, and you could see it on the video, is, well, of course, I'm sort of, it was a huge fight, and at the time, Ali, was Clay, and he was making predictions, and he predicted that he was going to stop Henry Cooper, and he was on the way to doing it when he tripped over a left hook. And Cooper says that the fight would have he said that in his life, in his whole career, he threw 5 great left hooks, and that was one of them. And the unfortunate thing is that when you watch the replay, he nailed Ali, and Ali goes down along the ropes. If it had been further out in the center of the ring, Cooper thinks the fight would have been over. Because if you think about it, when you watch the replay, the ropes did catch him and sort of slowly put him on the canvas. Whereas, of course, if you get dropped in the center of the ring, you go down, and then you get that whiplash effect where your head bounces off the canvas. That could have put him out. But, of course, it's Ali, so who knows. There was Angelo Dundee working his magic. There was 2 things. One, the cut glove, which if you do watch, there is a split in the glove. They did not replace the glove. They ran to the locker room. There were no other gloves. After that fight, they would keep an extra pair of gloves under the ring. I guess today they still do.
Yeah.
But one thing that you also notice, and at the time, evidently, this was illegal, but not always illegal, evidently. But in this fight, it should have been. Angelo Dundee breaks a smelling salt under Ali's nose. You could see it on the replay. And I guess in the rematch, Cooper's management, argued firmly that there better not be any smelling salts. But of course, Ali comes out the next round and stops him on a TKO, just had him just draining blood, and the fight was over.
Yeah, the rule, smelling salts were legal up until I thought they were legal. Maybe it was right around that time when they became illegal. But they used to use smelling salts all the time, man. I mean, that's how they revived the guys. But yeah, the split glove was classic, and as a result, Now, when you have a fight that most commissions require, I think all commissions in the States anyway, require an extra pair of gloves, definitely for championship fights. Championship fights, you got to have the gloves there. And, in the event of a damaged glove, you have them right there so that nobody can complain, taking your time walking back to the locker room or whatever. But after that fight,
Ali definitely said that it was a very hard punch. He said not only did that punch shook me, but it shook my relatives in Africa.
Yeah, no, I remember that. And Ali always came up with some good ones, that's for sure. But he fought Ali another time. This time for the world title. Ali gave him a shot at the world title back in 1966, and the result was almost identical, except for the fact that Ali didn't hit the canvas in this one. But along the way, he did build himself back up into title contention, but he had a string of losses after that. He did lose to Ali a second time, then Floyd Patterson, as you mentioned before. He fought Floyd Patterson and was stopped again in 4.
Yeah, and he actually said that Floyd Patterson had faster hands than Ali and hit harder than Ali. He said that Ali moved better. Ali never stopped moving the entire time they fought. You couldn't stop him. You couldn't slow him down. But Patterson had a lot more pop, and Patterson knocked him out. And
that was an aging Patterson too. That was a Patterson well past his prime, a Patterson that had already lost his title to Sonny Liston and had lost another quick fight against Sonny Liston, and then the title had changed hands again. Ali had the title by this time. But interesting fight took place in 1968 against Carl Mildenberger, who was a top-rated fighter at the time. Henry Cooper won that fight via a disqualification. Tell us about that one.
I didn't do any reading on that one, but I do see that it looks like it was an illegal use of the head for butting.
Well, it was headbutts, yeah, and it was a frustration type of a fight. And Henry Cooper, it was a back and forth fight for the first couple of rounds, but then Henry Cooper took control, and Mildenberger just, was looking for a way out and ended up getting DQ'd in the 8th round. Interesting enough, Henry Cooper's final 6 fights of his 17-year career, that was one of them. It spanned from 1967 to 1971, over those 4 years. His last 6 fights, which generally you don't see with a fighter with the pedigree of a Henry Cooper, he had 5 wins, 3 of them coming by knockout, 1 the DQ that we just mentioned, and only 1 loss, and that 1 loss was his last professional fight that took place on March 16th of 1971 against Joe Bugner, another one of Muhammad Ali's victims. But that was an interesting fight, 15-rounder that went for, a bunch of European titles were on the line for that one for his last pro fight.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that was, he had a big size disadvantage, and it ends up being a close fight. But he had given his word to his wife that, that was it. He was done. So even though that there were some, rumblings for a rematch, he did not give into it. His wife. Speaking of Italy, that's where his wife was an Italian woman. Albina was her name. They were married for 47 years. She died in 2008 of a heart attack. They had 2 sons, Henry, Marco, and John Pietro. That's always nice to see a guy who's, he has his last fight and that's it. Walks away. And he was very popular. That was one of the things, is that he was the model of gentlemanly courtesy out of the ring. He won the BBC Sports Personality of the Year twice. There was times where he would things outside of the ring. One of the things that he did was launch a flu offensive, to help people go get their flu shots, get a flu vaccine. The slogan he used was, "Don't get knocked out by flu. Get your jab in first."
There you go. What did he die of in 76? At 76 in 2011.
I just read his obituary, and
I knew you did. I know.
I didn't even catch what it was. I think it was just old age.
76? Don't tell me that's old. Jeez.
Yeah, I know it. I didn't catch the cause of death.
The people loved him in Europe, that's for sure. His nickname, Our Henry. I'm guessing he didn't fare too well against today's heavyweights.
He actually didn't do that poorly. In the title bout championship boxing game first I put him in against Deontay Wilder. The first time they fought, it ended in a draw. One judge had it 115-113 for Cooper. One judge had it 115-113 for Wilder. The third had it 114-114 all. They fought again. Wilder 114-113, another card of 113-113 even, and the third judge pushes it to Wilder 115-111, a majority decision victory for Wilder. He had Cooper down 2 times in the 12th. When they fight 100 times, Cooper only wins 40. Deontay Wilder wins 56. They drew 4 times, and Cooper was able to take that 4.5 tons of impact left hook and stop Wilder 28 times. In his 56 victories, Deontay Wilder stopped Cooper 39 times. Against Anthony Joshua, his countryman, the first time they fought, it's a unanimous decision win for AJ. The cards were 115-112 and 2 scores of 114-113. Cooper was down in the 8th round. When they fight 100 times, Cooper wins 41, loses 57, draws 2, and stops Joshua 25 times. In his 57 victories, Anthony Joshua knocked Cooper out 39 times.
Interesting. He does do a lot better than I would have thought. Considering the height difference that he gives up to both those guys. I mean, he was barely over 6 foot.
He was always like around 190.
I know.
It said the New York Times in his obituary in 2011, it says he died after an unspecified extended illness.
Well, Henry Cooper, today's blast from the past. Great job as usual, Alex. Henry Cooper was a former British and Commonwealth and European heavyweight champion. He challenged Muhammad Ali for the world heavyweight title in 1966. He had a career record of 40 wins, 27 coming by knockout, giving him slightly under 50% knockout ratio. He lost 14 times, in which he was stopped 8, and he only had 1 draw in his 55 total fights. Our blast from the past this week, Sir Henry Cooper. So if you have a blast from the past, we have an interesting one to kick off 2018. It's not even a fighter. It's a venue, which I'll tell you about, Alex. But, Alex, we're almost out of time. We are out of time. But I have to get your thoughts.
On the new Star Wars movie?
2017 was a great year for boxing. It really was. And no, I don't want you to have to tell us why you're taking a sip of coffee. They save that for the ventriloquist act that you do as a part-time basis. But what do you think? What's in your opinion? What was the best fight of 2017? I know it's a tough one to pick, but what do you like?
Yeah, there's a lot of contenders, but I didn't feel like for take fighter of the year. I want to say Anthony Joshua, but he kind of fizzled in the second half of the year. In the first half of the year, that was tremendous, the victory over Klitschko. Vasyl Lomachenko is up there, but I think a lot of people didn't enjoy the Rigondeaux fight. I thought it was brilliant. It was like a chess match. It was amazing how graceful and beautiful it was, and yet so dominant. And it was just stunning how just that level of a guy who's been so dominant for so long, Rigondeaux, he could not suffer the indignity of being smacked around. And that was stunning to see at that level a guy come apart. And it literally was a no-mas victory. So that victory stands out to me as one of those moments of the year. The victory of Joshua over Klitschko. Andre Ward's victory over Kovalev was terrific, but then he retired. So it's weird because it seems like Golovkin, if Golovkin had gotten the win I thought he deserved, maybe he would be a shoo-in for Fighter of the Year. But I think that was a little bit disappointing. I thought he deserved the victory over Canelo, although watching a second time, I did think it was a close fight. I don't know. There was like Dax pointed out, there were some really terrific brawls. So I don't know. I guess for Fight of the Year, I got to lean toward Anthony Joshua.
Yeah, against Klitschko.
Yeah, well, I think Joshua total for his performance because he's really, like you had said earlier, so go the heavyweights, so goes boxing. He has broken records in terms of attendance. So he's putting tremendous amount of asses in seats, which is a major thing for our sport. I think if he was an American, more people would know him. And like I told you, I bumped into a paramedic last week who told me he thinks Deontay Wilder is going to...
I want that guy's address.
I couldn't believe it. I was too sick to argue with him. I was like, go ahead. I can't. I got to let it go.
I wish I was there. You might have fared worse if I was there because I would have directed all my attention to him. But in any event... But
in the next breath, he told me, you should really watch a lot more UFC.
Oh, God. If you had the strength, you should have grabbed him by his throat, right? You know what? You should really be more of a fan than you apparently are, sir. It's like...
My blood pressure is like, it seems to be increasing.
Yeah. Do I have to take my shirt off to show you how much of a fan I am? But anyway... Hey, Alex.
Yeah, I think HBO probably had the best brawls because, like Dax was saying, the Miguel Roman Salido fight was a thriller. I think it was this year, right? The first, or was it the tail end of last year that Chocolatito was upset? That might have been the tail end of last year, and then he was just beaten again. That was another big fight. So I don't know, but I guess I got to go with Anthony Joshua, just with a slight lead over Lomachenko.
Sounds good, my man. Listen, you have a great holiday. I will be talking to you between Christmas and New Year's to get our new stuff going, and we'll go from there.
Sounds great, Billy C. Hey, Happy New Year to you. Merry Christmas to you and your family, and to all the listeners. Be well, be safe.
Thanks, my man. You have a good one. We'll talk soon.
Take care.
That's Alex Pierpaoli. You can check him out on Wednesdays when we do our Blast from the Past, like you just got, But anyway, I'm not going to take a break right now. We are going to get my man Sal back. But overall, to tell you the truth, the way I see it, to me, so many great fights this year. There's no question about that. We had a banner year, a real good a comeback year for the sport. And as Alex pointed out, Vasily Lomachenko could very well be Fighter of the Year very easily. As Dax pointed out in a fantastic manner, his fights of the year, Bado Jack, James DeGale, a big fight to kick off the year. It just started so early on, and, it just continued all the way up. The one thing, and we got Sal back even though we can't see him, the one thing I will say, Sal, is this. The one thing I believe took place this year clearly was the fact that HBO has seemingly lost a step, in my opinion, in terms of their product, their boxing product. I hope that they can do a little better, because I can't stand Mario Ranallo, and I'm glad that ESPN got in the mix for the major fights. I mean, I think if boxing continues with the fights that we appear to be getting are coming our way in 2018, I hope the networks get their you-know-what together. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with you, and I think the networks got to work and provide the best venues and the fights that the fans want to see, and it's got to be a teamwork effort, and everybody's got to try and be on the same page for the sake of the sport and for the sake of the fans, to keep the interest, to keep the level of competition, and to give us the best there is.
What are you, in the shower or something? Is that why you're not giving us your video or what? Well, I guess it looks like we lost him. I guess he took that personally. But in any event, we'll try and get him back. But listen, so many things, so many great fights this year. But honestly, like I've said all along, my fight of the year is Anthony Joshua and Vladimir Klitschko. I believe that they were it should clearly be the fight of the year for the significance that it had, for the sport. So that's what I got to say. And anyway, I guess we lost Sal. He's totally off. On this day, December 20th, in 1905, Philadelphia Jack O'Brien knocks out Bob Fitzsimmons in the 14th round to win the world light heavyweight title. That took place in San Francisco. On this day in 1946, the best ever, Sugar Ray Robinson wins a 15-round decision over Tommy Bell to win the vacant world welterweight title, and that took place in New York City. One thing I want to make a comment on, Sugar Ray Robinson was regarded as one of the, he's regarded as the best fighter ever, but unfortunately, where he really shined was in the welterweight division, and there are virtually no film of him as a welterweight, which is sad. A lot of them were destroyed or just weren't kept. Most of the footage that we do have of the best ever was when he was a middleweight. So keep that in mind. And I was having a conversation with somebody in the chat room earlier. For some of the fighters that came prior to the late 70s, where the videos were the norm, you really got to read up on them. And you have to believe the majority of the articles that were written, because remember, there were a boxing reporter for every single newspaper in the United States. So go back and look them up and see what they say and listen to what they say. I know today we've become a society where we like to see and touch and feel ourselves and make our own decision, which is great, but we can't just throw all of these fighters that came prior to the technology of consistent film out the window because we can't watch them. Trust me when I tell you, Sugar Ray Robinson was the best ever, and trust me when I tell you, other great fighters like Jack Johnson, who virtually there's no footage on. Yes, there's some film that you see, but you can't really get how great he was. A great defensive fighter, nobody could hit him, and for all intent and purposes, he fought very similarly to Floyd Mayweather. He was a cautious fighter, was defensive-minded, focused on not letting his opponents hit him. And yet, when I get people talking to me, like, oh, he was so slow. Oh, he says, I'm like, the film you're watching is from 1910, 1909. That's a guy cranking a thing, one camera shot and outside. I mean, come on. Anyway, on this day in 1904, Jimmy Britt wins a 20-round decision over Battle and Nelson to win the vacant world lightweight title. It took place in San Francisco. On this day in 1929, Benny Bass knocks out Todd Morgan in the second round to win the world junior lightweight title, and that took place in New York City. On this day in 1985, Chong Kwan Chung knocks out Soon Chung Kwan in the fourth round to win the IBF World Flyweight title. It took place in South Korea. And finally, on this day, December 20th, in 1913, a fighter that many regard as the best ever. Aside, I think Sugar Ray Robinson was, but this guy is a close, not too far behind him. Sam Langford, the late, great Sam Langford, wins a 20-round decision over Joe Jeanette in their heavyweight fight that took place in France. The French Boxing Federation had stripped Jack Johnson of his world title and made this fight for the vacant belt that they would strip Langford of this belt within a month. So you think shenanigans went on in the sport today. Trust me when I tell you they went on yesteryear as well. Hey, listen, sorry we lost Sal, but between Sal and myself and Dax and Jeremy C. and, of course, Alex and my man Larry Hazard, who's grieving right now, and everyone else involved with the Billy C. family, including all of our writers and contributors, we want to wish all of you guys a very Merry Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate, and a very prosperous and happy New Year. We will return live on Tuesday, January 2nd. Use this time to catch up on some shows. I promise you this, we will be back better than ever, and there'll be no doubt in anyone's mind where the premier boxing talk program is. It's right here on Billy C. Boxing. As promised, I'm going to leave you guys with this. This was our very first Christmas card that we did. It's my personal favorite. It's the Billy C's version of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. So I hope you guys enjoy, and stay in touch over the next week. I always check my emails. Have a great one, guys.
There it was, the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a friggin' mouse. The boxing gloves were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that that fat guy in a red suit would soon be there. All three kids, Sonny, Mike, and Rocky, were all snug in their beds, with visions of Sugar Ray Robinson dancing in their heads, with the old lady dressed in, actually I forget what she had on, but I was in these feety pajamas and a cool-looking cap, and we both got under the covers for, a little nap. When all of a sudden there was this friggin' noise. It sounded like Ernie Shavers pounding a heavy bag. The walls, they started creaking and cracking and created such a clatter that I jumped out of the sack to see what was the matter. I tripped over a dumbbell and on the way down got tangled up in a jump rope. I was up at the count of 3, then stumbled over to the window. In kind of a flash, I had to move all the hand wraps out of the way and finally was able to throw open the sash. All I wanted to do was see what the hell was going on out there. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave the luster of midday to the outdoor boxing ring and all the other objects below, when what to my wondering reattached retina eyes should appear but this big red sled and 8 of them reindeers. There was this little old driver. He looked just like Angelo Dundee. He was so lively and quick that I knew in a 10-second warning signal that it must be that fat guy named St. Nick. Those deers, they were coming in like punches in bunches, but all seemed tame when the fat guy whistled and shouted and he called them by name. Now Johnson, now Burns, now Hitman Hearns, and Sammy Engot. On Ambers, on Liston, on Langford and Jersey Joe Walcott. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As the will-o-wisp danced, and he seemed to fly, and how the greatest himself rose to heights as high as the sky. Up to the housetop, the whole team flew with that big old sled full of boxing stuff and toys, and that fat guy in a red suit, too. Then I hear this thud on my roof, and it sounded like a crashing and banging of each one of those deer's hooves. I gotta be honest, as I was turning around, I thought to myself, I hope they don't all take a crap up there. And then down the chimney comes this fat guy in a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes, they were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys and all kinds of boxing stuff he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his sack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses. His nose was red as a friggin' cherry. I was thinking he had a few too many scotches, to be honest with you. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and he had a long beard that was as white as the snow. The stump of a stogie he held tight in his teeth, and by the smell of the smoke I could tell he was hanging out with Cheech. He had a tough-looking face and a big but solid-looking belly. But when he saw the top 10 heavyweights of 2008, he laughed and it shook like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump. Okay, he was a fat bastard, but a right jolly old elf, and I had to laugh because in him I saw myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head gave me the feeling I had nothing to dread, so I put down my gun. He didn't say a word and went straight to his work, stacking up presents and filling up the gloves, and then he turned with a jerk. He put his finger on the side of his nose. He gave me a quick nod, and up the chimney he rose. He sprang to the sled, and to his team he gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim as he flew out of sight, "Billy C. says Merry Christmas to all, and have fun at the fights."